Hey everyone, today we're going to be talking about Lord of the Flies Chapter 11, Castle Rock. So at the end of Chapter 10, we know that Jack and his savages came and stole Piggy's glasses, and also the source of any fire on the island. So at the beginning of Chapter 11, Sam and Eric and Ralph and Piggy are talking about what they need to do next. And Ralph is thinking out loud and he asks the other boys, are we savages or what? Right? So he recognizes that Jack's tribe is acting like savages and that they are not savages, right? And so they should not act that way. He also goes over the things that Jack is responsible for on the island. He talks about how the fire went out when a ship passed by. He talks about how there was ... aka Simon's murder. And he talks about how he came and took Piggy's sight and also any source of fire. So, obviously something has to be done. Piggy can't see, they can't start a fire. They need to do something. And Piggy has a plan to go to Castle Rock and talk to Jack. He says, I'm going to him with this conch in my hands. I'm going to hold it. Look, I'm going to say, you're stronger than I am and you haven't got asthma. You can see, I'm going to say, and with both eyes. But I don't ask for my glasses back, not as a favor. I don't ask you to be a sport, I'll say, not because you're strong, but because what's right's right. Give me my glasses, I'm going to say. You got to. So he's going to attempt to reason with Jack and say that, please just do the right thing, give me my glasses back. And of course, it's significant that he's taking the conch with him. The conch is the one thing that Jack does not have, and more importantly, it symbolizes order and leadership and civilization on the island. So hopefully, if Jack and the other boys see the conch again, they will come back to the sense of order that the boys had at the beginning of the book. That's the plan, Piggy's plan, and Ralph and Sam and Eric agree to go. But Ralph has another idea about how they might be able to get through to the savages. He suggests that they should all wash and clean themselves. He says, supposing we go looking like we used to, washed and hairbrushed. After all, we aren't savages really, and being rescued isn't a game. So he's thinking that hopefully if the other boys see them clean with hairbrush, looking like normal boys, maybe they will remember that, hey, we aren't playing a game and we are on an island and we really do need to be rescued. So that's his plan. And he is going to combat their savagery, right, with this cleanliness and this order and this civilization again. So the boys clean as best they can. They try to comb their tangled hair. And we get a comment from Sam about the savages and their face paint. Sam says, but they'll be painted. You know how it is. The others nodded. They understood only too well the liberation to savagery that the concealing paint brought. So again, we get this sense that the face paint, it acts as a mask for the boys. When they have it on, they are free to act in a way that they would not do if they were just barefaced, right? It allows them to be savages and to act in this different way. So the boys know this, and obviously Ralph is hoping to do the opposite and show them their clean faces and remind them of civilization. So the boys head off towards Castle Rock. Piggy, of course, is following behind, just barely following the trail of Sam and Eric's spears. And I mean, you gotta feel for him. I mean, he's on this crazy island and he can't see anything. I mean, I know when I take my glasses off, it's just blurs of color. I can't even imagine being in an unfamiliar place. So they get to Castle Rock, and Roger is acting as the sentry. He is the guard that is higher up, watching everyone who comes. And of course, he questions Ralph, and Ralph's response is to blow the conch and to call an assembly. Now, the boys, the savages, they do all appear with their faces painted and with their spears. They hear the conch and they come. But it's not in the same respectful way that they would have come to a meeting or an assembly at the beginning of the book. They show up, Jack is not there. And so as Ralph is questioning where Jack is, we get some interesting information that is really foreshadowing for what's going to happen at the end of the chapter. Roger, who is standing up higher, like we said, because he is the guard, took up a small stone and flung it between the twins, aiming to miss. They started and Sam only just kept his footing. Some source of power began to pulse in Roger's body. So we've seen Roger throw stones before. He threw them at Henry, and again, when he threw them at Henry, he didn't try to hit him, he just threw them in his general direction around him. So he's doing the same thing now. He's throwing these stones, but he's aiming to miss. He's not trying to hit Sam and Eric. However, we then get this quote. It says, some source of power began to pulse in Roger's body. So he gets this feeling, right? This powerful sensation. And who knows if it's because he's up higher than everyone else, he's watching the scene below, if it's just really the descent into savagery, the fact that he's now in Jack's tribe and Jack is his chief. But for whatever reason, he begins to feel this sense of power, and we will see that he continues to throw these rocks down at the boys below. Now, as this is happening, Jack shows up. He comes out from the forest where he has been hunting. He says, what do you want? And Ralph says, we need Piggy's glasses back. He can't see. We'll share fire with you, but we need a rescue fire. And the thing that really sparks Jack and throws him off is that Ralph calls him a thief, right? He says, you are a thief, which, to be fair, he is. He stole Piggy's glasses. But anyway, for some reason, that really sets Jack off, and the boys begin to physically fight. Now, at this point, they are fighting, but it said that they're using the butts of their spears. So they're not using the sharp part of the spears. They're using the blunt end. And so they are fighting, but it's not super intense yet. And Ralph becomes totally enraged, and he begins to yell at all of the savages, all of the boys, right? He says, don't you understand, you painted fools? Sam, Eric, Piggy, and me, we aren't enough. We tried to keep the fire going, but we couldn't. And then you, playing at hunting. So he again brings up the fact that hunting is not as important as the fire. The rescue fire is what they should be focused on, and the four of them can't keep it going, right? He says, he's basically saying, we need to come together on this so that we can be rescued, or else we will be here for who knows how many years. He says this, and it irritates Jack, and Jack retaliates in a kind of a weird way. To show his power and to retaliate against Ralph's yelling, he yells at his own tribe to grab the twins and tie them up, which they do. So he's showing his power. He says to Ralph, see, they do what I say. So he's showing him that he is a real chief because his tribe does exactly what he says. And he also now has the twins as hostages, and he knows that Ralph will try to rescue them. So this happens. Ralph, of course, is enraged. His temper broke. He screamed at Jack, you are a beast and a swine and a bloody, bloody thief. He charged. So they're fighting again physically. And at this point, Piggy stands up. He has the conch, and he is the one that begins to yell and thus breaks up their physical fighting. He says, I tell you, I got the conch. Surprisingly, there was silence now. The tribe were curious to hear what amusing thing he might have to say. Silence and pause, but in the silence, a curious air noise, close by Ralph's head. He gave it half his attention, and there it was again. A faint zoop. Someone was throwing stones. Roger was dropping them, his one hand still on the lever. So Roger is still throwing stones down at the boys, and we get some foreshadowing here because his hand is on the lever. We know from previous chapters that Jack has rigged up this big boulder on top of Castle Rock, and the boys have put a lever under it so that if they push the lever, the boulder will fall down onto whoever is below. Roger, of course, is the one in control of the boulder at this point because he is in the guard position and he is throwing the rocks down, but he has his hand on the lever. Piggy continues to give this big speech to all of the boys there, and he's trying so hard to reason with them. It's his last attempt to get them to listen, to give his glasses back, to listen to Ralph. He asks them all these questions. He says, which is better, to be a pack of painted Indians like you are, or to be sensible like Ralph is? Which is better, to have rules and agree, or to hunt and kill? Which is better, law and rescue, or hunting and breaking things up? So he's trying so hard to get them to listen. Keep in mind, he can't see them. He doesn't have his glasses. He's just standing there blindly holding the conch, right? And at this point, the big rock on top of the mountain comes down. Ralph heard the great rock before he saw it. The rock struck Piggy a glancing blow from chin to knee. The conch exploded into 1,000 white fragments and ceased to exist. Piggy, saying nothing, with no time for even a grunt, traveled through the air sideways from the rock, turning over as he went. The rock bounded twice and was lost in the forest. Piggy fell 40 feet and landed on his back across the square red rock in the sea. His head opened and stuff came out and turned red. So, Roger releases the big rock. It hits Piggy and bounces off into the forest. Piggy is struck and falls off the side of Castle Rock. He tumbles into the sea, not into the sea, he tumbles and lands on his back on this square rock, and his head splits open. And then his body is taken out to sea. So this happens. It says, this time the silence was complete. Ralph's lips formed a word, but no sound came. And this isn't necessarily more gruesome than Simon's death was, but in a way, it's much more intentional, right? The boys were confused and in that weird dance state, which is not an excuse, but there was more confusion going on, right? This was directed at Piggy. This was just a straight trying to kill Piggy. So this happens, everyone is silent, and Jack breaks the silence. He says to Ralph, see, I told you, I warned you not to come, right? He's not even reactive about what happened. He's just using it, jumping on that power train to say, see, I told you this would have happened. And at this point, he starts to throw his spear at Ralph with the actual spear. So he's intending to hurt Ralph. The other boys follow suit and also throw their spears at Ralph. Sam and Eric, we know, are tied up, and Ralph runs away into the forest to escape. The other thing that's really significant is that Piggy is not the only thing that dies. The conch shell, which we know is order and civilization, explodes into 1,000 pieces and ceases to exist. So it doesn't just break in half, it doesn't like fall into the ocean or whatever, it literally explodes. So we know that just like the conch, any sense of order and civilization is totally gone at this point, right? It's literally exploded into chaos. So that happens. And the chapter ends with Roger coming down from his guarding place atop the mountain, atop Castle Rock. He comes down and Jack is questioning the twins. He says, why didn't you join my tribe? Sam says, this isn't the way. But nonetheless, they are there, tied up. Roger edged past the chief, only just avoiding pushing him with his shoulder. The yelling ceased, and Sam and Eric lay looking up in quiet terror. Roger advanced upon them as one wielding a nameless authority. So this last line, this nameless authority that Roger now has, right? He's had this massive dive into savagery, even more than he was, right? And he's now this power-hungry boy who got this sense of power by first throwing stones, then pushing that boulder down, and he then goes upon the twins with this nameless authority, right? And it's evil. He has this evil with him, and he basically takes the twins. We don't say this, but we can infer that he takes them and he hurts them in some way. So, a lot of stuff. We have one chapter left to see how the book is going to end. But for today, your assignment is going to be to write a theme statement, which we've done before. You are going to write one on the topic of either civilization or savagery. So on Google Classroom, there are notes for you to review on theme, as well as a link to a short video in case you need to do a little bit more review. But you are writing your own theme statement for civilization or savagery. We will check in after we read chapter 12.